Graham is an all-in believer in chemtrails.
But in some cases, in some very rare cases, they do seem to have some form of intelligence, and you certainly see that in the case of Earthlights. I mean, you may have read some of Paul Devereaux's books on Earthlight.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica show. We are going to be chatting with Lewis Proud a little bit later about electromagnetism and magnetism, all sorts of fun stuff like that. Fun episode, one of those weird Sunday afternoon shows. It always seems a little weird recording on a Sunday, but it was a good show, fun show. Of course, before we get into all that, we got the one and only Graham. I found a hole in my pants pocket, so I decided to play ball hockey Dunlop. How's it going?
What the fuck does that mean?
I thought you would get it.
No, what does that mean? I don't understand any of that. What does that have to do with ball hockey? A hole in my pants pocket. I don't
It's just
get
what it says. From Frank.
Yeah, when you play with your balls.
Oh, balls. Oh, ball hockey. Oh, yeah. Idea. Well, because I have a hole in my pocket for one of my favorite pairs of pants, and it pisses me off because
Do you play with your balls when it happens?
Chain slips through there all the time. So I was like trying to think of.
Shouldn't
how
it just
that affects
happen
ball
once?
hockey. Why?
Before you realize there's a hole in that pocket and you don't put change
It's
in
a
it?
small hole, and it doesn't always fall out, so I take the chance sometimes.
Can you just put it in your other pocket?
I don't like that. You know, things go in certain pockets for a reason. You got phone in one pocket, you're changing the other pocket. I don't like it with my phone, right? Change with my phone.
So why don't you put your phone in the thing with the small hole? Put your change.
Doesn't feel right.
You know, it's kind of like, sometimes it's just like Darwinism. You deserve to lose your money.
Okay, enough of making fun of
Anyway,
them.
so is that what ball hockey is? When you play with your balls with your fingers through your holes? That's like a Urban Dictionary
I
definition.
think that's just a real old, childish way to,
I'm gonna hit
go
up.
there.
Well, let's go to the Urban Dictionary.
I don't see why you have to do that.
Quit playing ball
No, it was
hockey.
pocket pool. Is when,
I heard that one too.
Yeah.
That was back in the 70s. It was pocket pool.
How do you know? You weren't even around, even close to being around.
I was just I wasn't even a
You weren't
twinkle in
even
my
twinkling
daddy's
in my
eye.
eye.
No. Ball hockey. Hockey played on a surface that resembles an ice rink, but is smaller in size and is
It's
not
not
ice.
smaller than ice rink. Yeah, that's wrong right off the bat. I gotta change that. Wikipedia. It's wrong.
It's not.
Oh, that's the Urban
It's the
Dictionary.
Urban
Yeah.
Dictionary. Do you know what the Urban Dictionary says if I type in Grimerica? It says a Zen state of mind.
No.
Many people
Come on.
believe it may even be a physical location likely to be found in Atlantis.
Come on.
Guy 1, fucking tough day at work. I'm going home to do Grimerica. Guy 2, I should too. Cruising with steak is getting boring.
That's not in the Urban Dictionary.
Yeah.
No.
Guy 1, dude, being in Grimerica puts me in a place that gets me ready to face the world.
Okay, we've already done this segment. This was your Twitter poll or whatever, or this was one of the Facebook questions.
What was?
What does Grimerica mean to you? And then people would say,
This is the Urban Dictionary.
I know, but that was the same thing. People
No, it's
took
not.
their Facebook thing off the Urban
This
Dictionary.
is
They
from,
put their Facebook
well, this one
into
is
the
from
Urban
November 18th, 2017.
Dictionary. That's where you
Guy
got a
2,
lot of those
that's so
things from.
sweet. Quit pointing at me.
I'm not pointing at you. Did he
Well,
say
that's
it?
in the post.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's 2 definitions. Definition 2, not your grandparents' paranormal conspiracy podcast, broadcasted to the universe from Canada. Joe, would you shoot or save Bigfoot? Bob, what? Joe, I heard the question from Grimerica. That was by Glitch Tech on 4/20,
Wow. There you go.
April 20th, 2018.
I do have a beef about
A
you
beef
right now. Yeah.
with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we're in a show,
Mhm.
and I'm pointing. I'm not pointing at you. Like
just that's clearly
I'm not
pointing
at you. As in like you. I'm just expressing myself with my hands. I'm not pointing at you. And then you interrupt my flow and you interrupt the show and you got to do this weird face thing and it's not about you and I'm not pointing at you.
What's that? What do you call that?
I'm not pointing at you. I'm not going like that. Like, you know, like you. I'm not doing that. It's not fair. And then it fucking throws me off and then...
Oh, just don't point at me, bro.
Well, you got to get over that somehow. We got to figure out maybe some past life therapy or
maybe
you're a dog in the past life or something.
At me. How about that? Could that be part of the therapy?
I'm not pointing at you. I'm trying to explain that. You can't just be watching my hands in case it goes, goes in that general direction. That's not pointing at you.
Okay, I'll try and dial it back.
Okay, and I'll try and not physically point, but if I'm expressing myself,
okay, this is good. Festivus. It's like an early Festivus.
Yeah.
Airing of the grievances. Actually, when this episode comes out, I'll be at the Polar Express.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going on the motherfucking Polar Express.
That creeps me out. That movie creeped me out.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Just gave me the creeps.
Probably because you're fucking 42 years old in a theater full of children.
I didn't see it in the theater.
Okay.
I didn't even watch all of it because it was fucking creeping me out.
Tom Hanks? The animation is a little off.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Some of those movies.
But it's 15 years old now.
Sometimes it's like, I know, I swear some of these movies, they try and make them into like high def or 4K, whatever the fuck your TV is, and it's just like gets weird.
Yeah.
But it gets a little weird. I think, so is the homeless guy on the train Santa Claus?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Anyway, yeah, we go on the train. We sit on the train.
There's a live train that's supposed to be like the Polar Express.
Yeah.
Oh, taking the kids?
Yeah.
When are you doing that?
Friday. Nice. It's fucking ridiculous. You got to be there. It starts at 4:30, and you got to be there really 45 minutes early.
Why would they do that?
I don't know. My kid doesn't even get out of school till fucking 3:30.
Yeah, why would they? So all the adults have to leave work early to get to the Polar Express?
But I didn't know it existed, so I just fucking, by the time I found it, all the Saturdays are sold out. So you take a Friday, I'm assuming it'd be like Friday night. You gotta be there at 3:45. Who the fuck can be someplace at 3:45? It's an hour out of the city.
Really?
Well, it's in Moseley. Anyway, they got the reason I bring it up is because they have the fucking midnight train ride in the cars with no ceiling, glass ceiling. You could see city UFOs out of a train in the prairies. Maybe a meetup.
You can't really. Well, you'd have to turn all the lights off in the car. Like you.
Well, that's what the point of the car is. It's the stargazing train ride.
Is it really?
Yeah.
You can really see stars?
I think so. I've never done it, but they call it that. So it'd be annoying if they just had a bunch of lights on. I think it's like at that Aspen crossing, right? So it's just that little train track. It goes like fucking 20 miles and comes back, and that's it. It's just this little chunk of train. Crosses Aspen or whatever.
That's what, I don't even know these towns.
I don't know what the fuck that is.
Is this north of us? Northeast? That can't be northeast. Southeast. Okay. That's an idea. Yeah, might be fun.
They have the one you just stops.
Can you take over a whole car? Like, because it would be pretty weird if we're doing our protocols and meditating at the singing bowl and all that, and
there's a bunch of kids yelling and screaming, a bunch of drunks.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. We'd have to have our own car.
You'd have to book out the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think it's about $72 a seat. How many seats have one going there?
Holy.
That might just be for the Polar Express. You get a golden ticket and you get the little ball that jingles. You don't know because the movie creeped you out. Why do you watch movies if you don't have kids? Why would you be watching the Polar Express? Do you watch all the kids' movies?
No, because back in the day, like 15 years ago, some of those animated movies, like Aliens versus Monsters, like those were hilarious movies.
Some of them are still pretty good.
Those were
which one I really liked was Inside Out was pretty good. It's the one about feelings. It's a Pixar one about feelings. And
you think that's good for the kids to?
Yeah, probably better than what we've been doing. I think we're sort of dealing with the repercussions of that now. We live there. We see what that does to people, but. The other one I just watched was the last really good ones were fucking Lilo and Stitch, I think. Ooh, I haven't watched that. Is that worth watching?
The first one and the second one.
Is your mic on?
Okay.
The mic's not on.
No, it's not.
Terrence got you turned down.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm always looking for a good cartoon. Right now, it's Christmas movie season. I like Christmas.
That's probably why I watched it. It was probably a Christmas thing.
I watch a lot of cartoons.
Do you?
A lot of cartoons. I probably watch as much cartoons as Grimsteak watches anime.
I don't think so.
That's probably not. Yeah.
Why is he watching so much anime?
He loves anime.
Why?
Cause I don't know. Because it's cool. I guess he likes it.
Is it? Huh.
If you like it.
What do you got for us, buddy?
Oh well, I got a long email here. So do you want to start
A
with
long
that
email?
kind of, or do you want to?
What
Do you
kind of-
mind going into that? I mean, I got some great. I got to pick
14
and
signs
choose
you
between-
watch too much anime.
Okay, let me start off with this one first. It'll be fun.
Let me start
Are
off
you
with just
serious?
one of these, yeah. That's trying to get me to download something. Of course, this fucking... I don't want to watch anime.
No, just.
Ugh. Yeah, fuck it.
Okay.
Read your email.
Just
Is it a jingle?
Grimsteak, our friends at Cruising with Steak. He's got all 14 signs. You can just say that right now.
He's got what?
All 14 signs
All 14 signs of what?
that he watches too much anime. You said there was
Yeah, I don't know. What that seems to have been clickbait. I probably have some anime fucking virus running around this motherfucker now. Is this a jingle-worthy...
Well, you can
email?
call it a synchro. I'm gonna read one that everybody probably knows already, but I think it's worth redoing.
Ripple stick? Synchro?
Sure. Yeah.
I want a good score for my synchronicity. If Graham reads it out, then Darren might give it to me. Hey, don't you please read it low, yeah.
So this is just from Matt. He says, "Hello, Graham. On a recent episode, you guys were talking briefly about the Lincoln Kennedy assassination coincidences. So I thought I'd pass along a list from one of my weird books. Richard Belzer also adds another one to the list from his book, UFOs, JFK, and Elvis. So I'm going to save it for the end. And he also asks if we've heard about the curse of Tippecanoe or Tippecanoe.
40.
That's
You're going to save what for the end?
this one that this guy adds to the list of Lincoln, Kennedy.
Are you going to go through the whole list?
Yeah, I
We're
think
doing
it's-
that right now?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think it's a good enough. I did feel like some of these were left out, actually. Some of them were left out. It didn't seem like there was as many as I remembered, so you might remember a couple of them. So Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Kennedy was elected
1960?
in 1960, exactly 100 years later. Both men were deeply involved with civil rights for Negroes. Both men were assassinated on a Friday in the presence of their wives. Each wife had lost a son while living at the White House. Both men were killed by a bullet that entered the head from behind. Lincoln was killed in Ford's Theater. Kennedy met his death while riding in a Lincoln convertible made by Ford Motor Company. Both men were succeeded by vice presidents named Johnson, who were Southern Democrats and former senators. Andrew Johnson was born in 1808. Lyndon Johnson was born in 1908, exactly 100 years later. The first name of Lincoln's private secretary was John. The last name of Kennedy's private secretary was Lincoln. The first name of Lincoln's... Oh, sorry, I just read that. John Wilkes Booth was born in 1839, and that's according to some sources, so I guess that's not confirmed. Lee Harvey Oswald was also born in 1939, 100 years later. Both assassins were Southerners who held extremist views. Allegedly. Both assassins were murdered before they could be brought to trial. Booth shot Lincoln in a theater and fled to a barn. Oswald shot Kennedy from a warehouse and fled to a theater. Lincoln and Kennedy each has 7 letters. Andrew Johnson and Lyndon Johnson each has 13 letters. John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald each has 15 letters. I mean, it's... Okay, one more. In addition... I lost it.
Spooky action at a distance.
No kidding, eh? In addition, a week before Lincoln was shot, he was in Monroe, Maryland. A week before Kennedy was shot, he was in Maryland, Monroe.
Is that the add-in that buddy emailed in?
Yeah.
Is that just a zinger or is that true?
It's, well, I don't know.
You could be spreading fake news right now.
I know, I could be. In addition, the first public proposal that Lincoln be the Republican candidate for president in a letter to the Cincinnati Gazette, November 6, 1858, also endorsed a John Kennedy for vice president, John P. Kennedy, who was formerly Secretary of the Navy.
Of the Navy.
So it's just one of those ones that really makes you think. I mean, I thought there was a few more. I thought it was a little bit more profound, but it does make you think, is this really... is the nature of reality?
There's some strangeness there for sure.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay, I got a long one from... this is like a trip report, weird synchro, and it's also a technical problem with support that we can address. I only got this a couple days ago, so I figure it's probably a good time. This can lead into... kind of a little sports segment, talk about Black Budget and PayPal. Well, let me start with this one.
Can I play a jingle?
Sure.
What jingle would I play?
Whatever you want. It's trip report and synchro and all of it together. It's a big long email with all three.
Yeah, you only mentioned two things.
Technical problems with the support.
We don't have a technical problems with the support jingle. Oh, we do. We have a housekeeping jingle now, though.
That's not really.
What?
Grimerican Trip Report.
Oh, nice. So this is from... see, people have to say if they don't want to be... They don't want me to read who wrote it, or if they don't want me to read their emails, they have to say so.
And fact check it before you send it in, because Graham's just going to read whatever you write.
What do you mean fact check it?
Don't send us.
Fact check what? They're fucking personal stories most of the time.
Well, most of the time, but that one wasn't.
That's true. But
Yeah.
that's fine. We've all heard that.
Then you get clipped out, have we?
Yeah. So this is from Alex, and he says, "You canceled me." LOL. And it's a screenshot of PayPal. Your automatic payments were suspended. So I better be careful not trying to disparage.
Don't disparage PayPal.
That's apparently in their terms of service. I can't disparage them. Hello, Alex McCook. Grimerica has suspended.
Why would you say his full name?
Because that's what the screenshot says. Grimerica has suspended your automatic payments. Contact Grimerica for details or how to reactivate your payments. Here are the details. So this is not new. This is happens to other shows all the time. I don't think it's anything nefarious.
It happens to us. We've heard about this happening to us at least a couple dozen times.
It's not nefarious. It's just, I don't know. It's pretty silly, really.
Well, the problem is we've had a couple people email in and say that their fucking account got frozen for 4 months or whatever. 6 months. But he said that it fucking froze his account didn't give us our money, and then it froze his PayPal account for 6 months over this $3.32 I think we talked about it on the show.
Episode. So anyways, it's not, if you get that cancellation notice, it's not us.
We wouldn't say no.
Later on, we can talk about other ways to support other options like Stripe and Patreon and stuff like that. So here's this anyways. So hey, sorry, this got kind of long, so I broke it into 3 parts to make it easier. It starts with a technical issue, and then a synchro happened, and I started ranting, kinda. Anyways, hope you're having a good day, and this long email isn't too boring. Well, I loved it. I loved the email, so I want to read it right now, and it's got this. Hey, Graham, first I wanted to say thank you for the great show you guys put out. It keeps my day and mood positive, and the reason I'm emailing this is because I finally signed up for a monthly donation, $3.33.
Wow. Much obliged, sir.
Immediately after I signed up that on your website, the page redirected me back to the home page and displayed something like "This page is unavailable."
What, did he sign up on the Stripe?
I don't know. I checked my bank account and it took out the $3.33 on today, the 10th. I can send you a screenshot of my transaction history if you want. I checked my email to see if I received a username or some type of login info, but I haven't yet. If it is something that I just need to wait for, please let me know. I'm not really worried about it. I was mostly donating because you guys deserve it, but the black budget feed would be cool. It may be a problem with the switch over to Stripe, so I figured this technical problem might be good for you guys to know about. I know this tech stuff is Darren's field, so maybe you can just forward it to him. Darren doesn't really read my email, so I'd rather just read it on the air, and then that's a guarantee that Darren can sort of address it.
Assuming I'm paying attention.
Thank you again for the amazing show. You guys are great. So we can stop now quickly and say, so we're still manually sending out stuff for
especially if you signed up through the Stripe.
So if somebody signs up, you still get a manual email that we'll do automatically with black budget feed.
Yeah, and then I'll get Ryan. I'll get you a password and a username. But if you go through Stripe, that's all manual. The PayPal, I think, does. Well, let's go over to the fuck you page. Addresses these things. Let's see. The website is much faster now. It's on the new server. The problem was that they transferred the website. They put the website on a server on the West Coast, and they left the security certificate on the server on the East Coast.
Who's they?
I don't want to say.
Really?
Our host.
Okay.
We don't say them. People can't go and say these guys are fucking Nazis. You got to take them off. Mostly you. Yeah, if you go through PayPal on the website, you should automatically get something. If you don't, shoot me an email.
Okay.
If you go through Stripe, it's manual. You got to email me.
Okay.
And the Stripe, especially,
if somebody goes through Stripe, they have to email you for the black budget feed?
I should be able to actually find a setting in Stripe that makes it email me.
Yeah.
Because right now it doesn't. We've had like 6 people sign up through Stripe.
I wonder. Okay, so we should figure that out. So, because we have to get.
Well, I actually think through Stripe, I think I can set up a page on Grimerica. I just haven't done it yet because everything's a scramble.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think what it does is when you fucking sign up on Stripe, it'll send you to a page on Grimerica that's non-navigable, and then I could just have the information there. I think.
Okay, we'll figure that out.
The Stripe's been working for like 3 days. Fuck, give us a break.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, nobody's giving you busting your balls. It's me. I'm just want to make sure people get their feeds to the black budget, because that's where we put all this extra content. Sometimes a little more controversial. Darren's been reading essays and stuff. Well, I read a couple of them too.
That's pretty pointy.
It's it's fine. Okay, here's a weird synchro that this guy has here. So I was typing out this email while I'm at work. I listen to your show. I should say
the PayPal buttons on the website have been acting funny. We've had a couple people sign up because you enter your own amount, right? We've had one person try and sign up for a $10.89, and PayPal keeps entering it as $1.11.
Wow.
And then someone else tried to do a $15 month, keeps coming up as $1.11. So Jordan's trying to fix it right now.
Okay.
Said he might have to delete it and reinstall it, and then other ones are fine, but it's like random ones. It's just taking and being like, no, we'll just call that. We'll just call that $1.11.
It couldn't just pick a one that's higher than people are trying.
Well, then we might even actually get in trouble. So at least it's lower. I'd rather it was lower.
Lowest one, yeah. Okay. I work in a store off the highway in Boring, Oregon, so I'm bored most of the time. So I emailed your show a couple years ago. Oh, yeah, there is a board. I remember this guy's email. So I emailed your show a couple years ago, didn't really say much, didn't even think you would read it over the air, and I just mentioned how much I appreciate the show. I found it through Spotify, and that I would soon send in an email about a Kundalini LSD yoga experience that I had. I never sent the email about the experience because I'm a stoner and I never get around to it. Kind of like why it took so long to donate. Anyways, the synchro part of it is that while I was typing this out and listening, this is to an older app, 245, you start reading out some trip reports. The guest is talking about some whippet experience first, then an LSD experience.
Can you do whippets when you're clean?
I don't remember what a whippet is.
It's when you suck the gas out of the whipped cream container.
Yeah, it's like instant brain dead.
That's
like you can feel your brain cells dying.
Is that like Pam? We used to do Pam as kids.
It would be sort of, you like take an aerosol can, like whipped cream.
Like you don't turn it upside down. You hold it up and you go,
You
Do you
suck
get
all
the cream
gas
as
out.
well, or?
No.
Don't
not
you
really.
remember on Night in the Roxbury? He's like, I was up till 4 and we were driving around till 4 in the morning looking for more.
Oh my God, no, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I was actually just listening to the Night at the Roxbury soundtrack with the kids on the weekend. That's great. What is love? Baby, don't hurt.
Oh boy! All right. So speaking of tangents here, so
Yeah, don't do whipped.
the dude had put in some LSD in his eyes. So you guys went off on a little tangent. You said that people didn't need to do drugs to get into a spiritual place, and Darren said no one is practicing meditation while on acid. Then he says he has heard of people taking acid and having Kundalini experiences. So that's pretty wrong. Pretty weird. He's writing this email about his Kundalini experience, and we're talking. How many times have we talked about acid and Kundalini experiences?
6.
Once, maybe twice.
Once.
I might be wrong, but I haven't heard anyone else on your show having a psychedelic Kundalini experience. So the fact that you guys got distracted and happened to mention the email I sent in a couple years ago at the same time that I was typing out a new email to you about a technical problem, I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool and worth explaining.
That's pretty wild.
That's what happens. It's just it's happening more frequently to everyone I know. It seems to be. Did you know? See, that wasn't a point to you.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I didn't say anything.
I know, but I'm just saying. I almost.
That actually affected his fucking consciousness. Now I feel bad. I feel like a bully.
10.5 years ago.
That was close.
10.5 years ago. I found a journal that I was writing, and I was talking about synchronicities 10.5 years ago before we were there.
Isn't that like you found the journal 10.5 years ago, or you found the journal from 10.5 years ago?
Yeah.
How long have you been sober?
It was from recovery.
Do you have the journal still? Can you bring it in? Can we read it?
It's just short notes and stuff.
Let's read it. The Black Budget.
There was a little synchro in there from that.
What was
Isn't
it?
that crazy? I went my first day of Qigong in the place. I
Yeah.
opened up Eckhart Tolle's New Earth to read it, and the first word I looked at was Qigong. So you're not paying attention.
Qigong. That's I don't know. That's because Qigong's in your head.
The book, it's full of, it's a full book. I open it up, I look at the first word Qigong on the day that I had the first
Was it
time
the
I
first
practiced.
word in the book?
No, it was
So
like
your-
a random
your eyes
spot.
Picked it out because
It
your
was a
Qigong
random
was
spot.
on your brain. Yeah, your
It was a random spot. I
brain's
opened up
not
the
random.
book and looked at it. And it was
Just probably what book?
Eckhart Tolle, New Earth.
How many times? I'd like to know how many times Qigong.
Once, probably.
Huh.
It was pretty profound. I wrote it down in my journal. I mean,
Well, you were drunk, probably.
no, it wasn't.
Or this was sober.
Yeah.
You read Eckhart Tolle sober in recovery?
I read it. Actually, it might have actually helped get me there because I was reading it before and during. It was weird.
We gotta get our hands on this journal.
Never.
Is it in storage?
No. Okay, here's the trip report. So I might as well explain the Kundalini experience I had. It was a couple years ago, and I was in one of those moods where I felt it was time for a psychedelic mental reset. I normally like mushrooms for this, but I couldn't find any, so I found some acid in the process.
Oof, it's not the same.
It was from a good friend, so I trusted the source. So I got a fair amount to experiment with a couple times. The first couple weekends, I was just trying to get a feel for this acid and see how I was going to feel on it, its strength and how the body reacts and such. So I wanted to be able to notice any changes when I really went for it. Around the time I was doing this, I had listened to the Terrence McKenna episode, and it was really affecting me and how he talked about people having reverence when they smoke weed. Being a stoner, that is something I hadn't really done much before, but the idea is great. So I was trying to practice it as much as I could, and I still often do when I think of it. This mindset is something I was really trying to bring into the LSD experience, along with the idea of Kundalini from one of your other guests. So after mentally and physically preparing myself for this final weekend, it was time. I started my night off by cleaning my place, and making it into a trip-friendly atmosphere, and preparing myself one area for yoga and one for smoking weed and paying tribute, and one for sitting and meditating. Once it was all ready, I said a little prayer of intention in front of my Buddha, and I took my acid. Then I started to smoke weed and pay tribute for about 20 minutes until I started to feel this slightest tingling feeling or the slightest feeling of it coming on. Then I started the yoga. I put together a little routine to center myself without too much physical strain. And I did this for as long as I could, trying to focus on the thoughts of growth that I was going for. I'm not sure how long I did yoga, but I did till I started to forget what was next and started to get pretty high. Once I got to that point, I sat down and started to meditate. While I was meditating, I was focusing on my chakras as they went up, doing a little saying for each chakra and putting energy into each one. I did this for a little while, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, until I started to have the strongest sensation running up my spine and flowing out of the top of my head. It was really intense. And if I hadn't known what Kundalini experience was, I would have been kind of weirded out from it. The feeling was great, like my whole body was vibrating and a hot electric snake wrapped around my spine. The strangest part of this was when the feeling went away, so did the LSD high. I was totally sober. I took the time when I first took the acid. It was about 3 hours. So he took the time, and it lasted like 3 hours. So after this experience, it was just gone. He says an acid trip normally lasts between 8 and 12 hours, depending on how clean and how strong it is. The previous times he tried that specific one, it lasted 8 hours one time and closer to 10 the next time. So the fact that my body processed it in such a short time amazed me. I feel like my body used the energy from the acid and burned it like gas during my Kundalini experience. It's funny, I was kind of thinking the same thing. It's like it just like revved it up and processed it really fast, or used it really fast, and or maybe his body flushed it out even, or something like that.
Could have been something like that. I don't know how you'd flush it out. Maybe. Who knows?
Through the chakras in the spine.
Or maybe it's bad acid.
I've had many psychedelic experiences, and this is one of the most profound for me. Not just the feeling of my chakras and my body during the Kundalini, but the short-lived trip. I know the body builds a tolerance to acid, which is why I was taking 2-week breaks between trips, so that's not why it was so short. Crazy experience. I'm curious if anyone else has had a similar one. I highly recommend the experience to people. Everyone who partakes should take some time to add reverence to their experiences, whether just smoking weed or psychedelics. Sorry this got so long. I'm stuck on boring, so I didn't have anything better to do. And how this all fit together was pretty cool. You guys are awesome. Good vibes from Sean in Oregon.
I love Oregon. Yeah, I'm not a big acid guy. Prefer the mushroom.
Would you try the yoga and the Kundalini meditation on mushrooms then?
Yeah, I got some fucking mushrooms in my pocket.
What?
Yeah, I picked some up today. Me and the wife.
Feels weird.
Is that a synchro?
Nah.
No. They're not in the room, actually. They're in my jacket pocket. Does that make you feel better?
Yeah, it feels... Yeah. It feels weird just picking up illegal drugs and talking about on the show.
Oh. Fuck them.
It's okay, they shouldn't be.
Nobody's listening. By the time the cops catch on, they won't be in my pocket.
So there you have it. Thanks for the email. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, good thing to try.
I'd be curious to hear if there's any sort of precedent.
Yeah.
I heard you can sing yourself out of a trip. Orange juice. Never heard of Kundalini.
Sing yourself out of a trip, really?
Yeah. Out of a bad trip. I think you still end up just sort of laughing it off.
I was talking at my CSED. I was listening to people at my CSED, my CE5 meeting there the other night, and they were talking. Celia's mom was talking about resonating overtoning, and how when they were they went to the dark table restaurant. Have you guys ever heard about that?
Is that in town?
Yeah, it's completely dark.
I didn't know there was one of those in Calgary. I've heard of those. So it's dark and they feed you, right?
Yeah.
What do they feed you?
I don't know. What kind of food? Vegetarian food.
Seriously? No meat? Cat?
Anyways,
people don't actually eat cats. There's not enough meat on them.
Really?
Thank God.
Yeah, I lived in China for 1.5 years. Nobody eats cats.
Thank God.
What about dogs?
Dogs, yes. There's stew dogs. There's like a breed of dogs that are they're chickens. They're called stew dogs.
So, anyways, this is like.
Graham's day is just ruined.
So, see, his mom was overtoning, and she created I think this created a flash.
A tulpa?
A flash of light, like a couple flashes of light on Celia's son's shoes. And it's really interesting because there's other stories about a whole bunch of people toning, and they lit up this pyramid in Mexico, like physically lit it up from sound.
Any video evidence of this lit up pyramid, sound lit up pyramid?
Probably. I think it's the first time I've heard about the light. I mean, I think we've talked about that in the Great Pyramid as well, possibly creating light through sound, but it's fucking fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know. That's all new to me. I don't recall. I remember making light out of semen somehow.
Well, yeah, that's the one. The Electric Egyptians. I was talking about that episode that night.
Big difference between
with
sound
James,
and semen.
was that James Brown or
You're listening to James Brown.
the Electric Egyptians and how
Getting
they
your semen together.
What?
Isn't James Brown that like sexy to song singer?
Sexy song singer? Is that what you're trying
Like
to say?
make-out music?
Not really. I don't know.
James
No?
Brown was the king of soul. He was like the I Feel Good guy.
Oh.
Yeah, he smoked a lot of meth. Like a lot of meth. Or no, it was PCP. Sorry. He smoked a lot of PCP.
Everything is a tangent tonight. But you're right. That was part of the Electric Egyptian thing, right?
Yeah.
Static electricity and
What episode number is that?
I'm looking it up. I don't know if it'll come up from a quick search. James Brown.
What number?
James Ernest Brown.
179.
Number 180.
Oh.
Oh, that's
Why did one...
Our numbering system is so accurate, we don't even know what number it is. I've got 180 here on my search.
180 is Grimerica Talks Electricity in Ancient Egypt and More with James Brown. And 179 is Grimerica Talks the Pyramid Code and Matriarchs. Was that Carmen Bolter? Yeah.
Oh, that's a long time ago already.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to that in the show notes with James Brown. Yeah, that was fascinating. It really does look like the hieroglyphs are talking about electricity as opposed to all this other stuff that the mainstream Egyptologists want us to think.
That was a fun episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Sparking up the sperm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sound sperm. I wonder. We should put get some of your sperm together. We'll put it on a drum, or fill your bowl up, your Tibetan bowl, just a little. Get it going. See what happens. See what happens. Not in the studio. Do it at home.
And then do what with it? Just watch it? Videotape it? See, light it up?
Light it up.
Yeah,
Fire.
yeah, all right.
I don't know.
Okay.
You're a little old to be having
I'll
kids.
do it on my sit when I do my sit.
Maybe that'd be a good way if you're having trouble getting pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little semen in the Tibetan bowl. Wah, 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 wah. Fire it in. Away you go.
Fired in how?
I don't
Already
know.
out.
I don't know. Syringe?
The only logical way is a turkey baster.
Mouth?
There's a word for that. Anyway, support the show. Oh, we found a plate. We're moving in.
I got the UFO quotes to do still, too. And I really apologize. I want to apologize to you guys. I found a bunch of extra ones down there.
That's all right. I was doing, was I doing quotes?
I'll tell you what. Once we move into the new place, we'll have our bookshelf up, well, the books, and we'll have the...
I missed the bookshelf. We could have all the books in the bookshelf.
And then we'll do quotes from the books.
The bookshelf went to the dump.
Especially the...
So we're going to have to get a new bookshelf. We're going to need a little bit of furniture. It's a lot more
especially the
space.
Charlie Robinson book.
Yeah.
All right.
Darren and Graham are going deep. It's a profound UFO quote of the week. Words to ponder and critique. It's a profound UFO quote of the week.
It's a weird one. I was arrested by an Air Force officer. He was saying, "Do you like the Constitution?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "We don't obey. We just do what we want. And if you tell anybody about us or the UFOs, you will just come up missing." And that was Corporal Jonathan Wigant from the Marine Corps.
Threatening people?
Yeah. You want to do another one? That's like the Man in Black kind of thing. Oh, here's a good one from Muhammad Ali.
Ooh, there we go.
If you look into the sky,
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
in the early morning, you see them playing tag between the stars. That was from Muhammad Ali, who's witnessed UFOs on at least 2 occasions.
So that's like what you talk about, right?
Yeah, maybe. Sure. It could be construed that way. One more?
No, my turn now.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? No generation has had the opportunity as we have now to build a global economy that leaves no one behind. It is a wonderful opportunity, but also a profound responsibility.
Bill Clinton?
Hey! Got it again. Quote or Or
What year was that from?
doesn't say, just says former U.S. President Bill Clinton. Now, was it the quote or was it the imitation that gave it away?
Both again.
Clinton's tough one.
That was good.
He seems like he'd be easier.
You
That's
did
a
good.
tough one.
Yeah. No, you did good. I didn't know you were such a good
I still feel like Huxley was the best.
Huxley.
Yeah,
Nobody knows what he sounds like.
exactly. What else you got?
Nothing, man.
Oh, yeah. So we got to talk about CACs.
Yes.
We're going to
Contacted the cabin in May with Randall Carlson for like 10 days. There's still lots of spots open. And there's rooms and tent spots. And yeah, everything's all included except for dinner. But breakfast and lunch is included. Trips and speaking times with Randall.
transportation.
Live podcasts.
Yeah, you're going to get to hang out with Randall. You get to hang out with us. We're going to go do some fireside chatting. We're going to go tour some stuff and get some presentations from Randall. We got the weekend of May 17th to 20th. Week May 20th to 23rd. That's during the week. May 23rd to 27th. That last weekend's pretty well full. You got to get in that motherfucker now. That's CAC 2019 at hdtravel.me to book.
Our long weekend is the last weekend in Canada? The May long weekend?
The first one. And
is it?
And for the States people, it's the last one.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, it's first come, first serve. Arrivals are responsible for their own dinner. Each group participates in guaranteed one tour and one talk. We're going to do some live podcasting and stuff as well. Graham said he's going to do some sea setting. We're right by the Four Corners. I want to rip down at one point down into the desert and check that out.
Well, we're still a couple hours from the Four Corners, technically, from there.
So you're there for 10 days. You'll have plenty of time.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it's not like we can just go there in 15 minutes.
So you get your breakfast, you get your lunches, get your own dinner, buy your food, whatever the fuck you want to do. You can get a single bedroom, $750. Additional person in that bedroom, another $500. Mind it, because we have to subtract a tent space because it is only 25 person cap per event. So yeah, you don't want to get that right away. I mean, I haven't checked in a couple weeks now, but I'm guessing, we're over 30% sold. And now we're into, like I was talking to Micah Hanks the other day. So, we're getting ready to expand this. So, Americans, get in there if you can. At least get your deposit down right away and get your shit booked and get your spot booked, because once we start mentioning this to the Graylian audience and maybe the THC audience, something tells me it's gonna disappear quick.
Point. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, it's not like it's gonna go.
We got the smallest audience out of the bunch. So, you guys get the first kick at the can for these things, but, I'm already getting prepared to go talk to Micah and because, we got to sell this thing. So I'd rather see this thing sold out and less of a stress than worrying about.
Totally. We do have tons of time left, but believe us, we've hung out with Randall before, and it's amazing conversation, and he's a great guy to chill with and chat with.
Yeah, we'll have him on the show here again in the new year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we got that coming up. Check it out. Like I say, you email Alan, Minister of Travel, over at cac2019@hdtravel.me. Do it today. And, of course, support the show. We got some good news. We are able to move into our space a little earlier than anticipated. So I'm actually going on Saturday to pick up the key. We'll probably move in...
just after the holidays, probably?
Yeah, I think I've got it slated for that weekend of like January 5th, 6th, or whatever that weekend is. We're going to move into the new space. And exciting times. Of course, that does mean we've got new bill all of a sudden. Now we've got a rent bill to pay every month.
It's a great deal, but still,
it's a great deal, but it's still, it's, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars that we're not putting out right now that we have to start putting out.
And it's what we want to do. It's a cool space.
Yeah, it
really fits our
ton of space.
Fits our thing, and we can help other people podcast there as well. We're going to start doing that. I think it'll be good. We have more of a ability now to kind of.
Oh yeah, exactly. It gives us the option to host some events, maybe. Who knows? It gives us the option to do a lot of stuff we can't do in a one-room operation. We were in the garage before, which was basically a smaller room. Now we're in a slightly bigger room, thanks to Brody. But now all of a sudden going into a real space is going to be something else. We'll have a space outside of the studio to like hang around or make a coffee or go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Eat dinner.
Yeah.
We'll have to get a fridge. No, you'll leave stuff in it, won't you?
I won't leave stuff in the fridge. No way.
No?
No.
That's not you that does that?
No.
Okay.
That's not me that does that.
Okay.
No.
I just throw it out.
I have a thing about fucking leaving food. I hate it.
I just throw stuff out because I just don't eat leftovers. Certain things, spaghetti, I really like leftover spaghetti. Leftover farmer sausage, also excellent. I won't do leftover steak. Some things I find are better leftover, strangely, but certain things just you gotta get through it the first time. But anyway, long story short, we just went from any sort of buffer we thought we had on our expenses with our support is fucking out the window. We're back to running tight. Yeah. So that means if we have a bad month, we might have to go into pocket. We'd rather not see that start to happen. So yes, it's a good time as ever to sign up for a monthly. Like we said, we had the last month, we had PayPal subscriptions dropping off at an unprecedented rate. I email the people as it comes. I still think it's got something to do with whatever triggered us, maybe triggered some other people that don't check that email. Because a lot of times when I get the email, I'll email them, like I would say like 10% of the time it'll be undeliverable. So the person's using a PayPal account with an email that I can't email them on. So that means if PayPal's frozen them or something like that. I don't know if that's got something to do with it. I know that it was right after we had our problems with PayPal, then we had a rash of payments not go through and cancellations.
Yeah, that's weird. It's weird looking back now.
And then we're having the button problems.
We thought everything was all figured out and fixed. But I mean, some of those
check
people,
your subscription.
Some of those people might just be boycotting PayPal in a way as well.
That's right. So that's why we opened up the Stripe options.
Yeah, we put up the Stripe options, and there's Patreon as well, right?
Yeah, we figured out a way to do the script. I mean, Patreon is in a lot of ways the worst option just because they take in a tremendous cut. Like it's like between 20 and 25%, I'm pretty sure. That's what it seems like. I haven't actually divided the numbers. I'm just looking by in versus payoutable.
Pretty good eye for percentages.
Yeah, so when I compare that to what Stripe and even PayPal are doing, it's like, a fifth, 5 times the transaction fee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, PayPal and Stripe, Stripe's over at Grimerica.ca/Stripe. It'll redirect you to a different website. That's just because there's problems lining up the PayPal and Stripe on the same site. So it's Grimerica.ca/Stripe. Bring over to Stripe. It's got, I think, 10 different monthly options, 10 different annual options, and a one-time donation option.
And any donation will get you the Black Budget feed.
Yeah, Grimerica.ca. Of course, you've still got the one-time donation button down at the bottom of the website, Grimerica.ca/support. You can enter custom amount for an annual amount or a custom amount for a monthly amount. Yeah, do that now. Really would help. We're going into, the next, we're trying to take the next step here into getting a space, getting out of Brody's, getting, just moving on up, I guess, as much as we can and get this show on the road. But we could use some more support. We really could. We've kind of hit the wall here of what we can do for a while here with the support level we got with this. So support the show if you can, when you can. We really do appreciate it. It really does help. And it is a value for value model, right? I mean, that's right.
We do, pretty much.
This is the 320th episode. They average about 2 hours long, but all the interviews are at least an hour. So there's at least, you could say there's at least 400 hours of interviews out there. So, I mean, I think there's a little value there. If you've listened to all those, probably time to sign up for a monthly. So back, 600 hours, you think? 700? Maybe even 800. Jesus, that's a lot. It's too much.
Yeah, we don't want to go with ads. We don't want to go with ads and sponsors and all stuff. Like, we really would rather. Should we start
season 2 at 500?
You know what? Because the goal is actually to get off of all this infrastructure that we need. Right?
Yeah, we were talking about that today. It'd be nice to be able to do our own hosting and do all that, so we're not worried about.
Because we're going to keep doing this for a while. It's fun and
yeah, that's right. And not only that, you get the black budget feed, which is sort of morphing into its own sort of thing. It's kind of the spot where we've decided we can say whatever the fuck we want, and we don't have to worry about fucking around with our support streams or our platform. We don't have to worry about getting deplatformed because, it's behind the paywall, so we don't have to worry about it back there. So we're dumping a lot more content into there than we have been historically. We're trying to get at least 2 a month.
Yeah, it might slow down a bit with the move coming up again because it slowed down with the past move into Brody's place here.
Yeah, but now that we've got the spoken word stuff we're doing, that's a little easier to churn out when you need to. We can do that sort of one at a time. We don't have to be together. We don't have to work with interviews.
We are going to be together for it, though.
That's right. But we don't have to interview someone.
That's right, yeah.
Which is another moving part you have to schedule in. So yeah, more content there. I think we're up to 35 episodes back there now. Another one coming out. Another 1 or 2 will come out this week. So we're almost up to 40 episodes there. Check it out. Grimerica.ca/support, Grimerica.ca/stripe. Get that shit going today. What else you got?
That's it.
All right, guys. Enjoy the chat. Lewis Proud, friend of the show. He's actually going to come back on probably end of February sometime, and we're going to go all fucking moon anomalies. This guy wrote the book on moon anomalies.
Oh, yeah, we should do that.
We're going to do that for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder what he thinks about the fake moon thing. Anyway, we'll get into that with us next week. Or not next week, sorry, next year. Look, this is going to come out on the 14th. There's only one more episode after this till Christmas.
Yeah.
Are we going to do a show that week on the 29th?
I don't know. We got to figure that out. We need to pre-record some stuff because you're going away to home. You're going home, right? You're going back east.
I'm going back east. Yeah. Heading back east.
See, you say it like you know what that means.
I do. You gave me a very good definition. Back east is most of the way east, but not all the way east. All right, guys. Enjoy the chat with Lewis Proud. It's a gooder.
This is going to be an exciting episode. We've got all the way from Australia, actually Tasmania, Louis Proud with us. He's a writer and a researcher specializing in Fortean or anomalous phenomena. I'm gonna read the titles of his last few books just because it really gives us an idea of the breadth of research he's been doing. Dark Intrusions, an investigation into the paranormal nature of sleep and sleep paralysis. The Secret Influence of the Moon, Alien Origins and Occult Powers. Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions, the Science of the Unexplainable. In that book, and then he's got a new book coming out. It's going to be called Borderland Phenomena. Volume 1 will be Spontaneous Combustion, Poltergeistry, and Anomalous Light. So there's lots for us to talk about here. Especially interesting is the Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions that was, his previous book, and it kind of overlaps into his new book. So I don't want to keep rambling here. Thanks for coming on, Louis.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, really interested when I was watching your videos and reading some of your books there. It's I don't even know where to begin because it's I got a lot of questions about the electromagnetic dimensions. If you don't mind starting there, maybe before we get into your new book, or we could even start a little bit further back than that. I mean, you take. Yep. From what I know, you take a pretty scientific approach to the paranormal, so you're not really afraid to hit it with science, but then also keep an open mind there for something that's still unexplainable. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, I do take a fairly scientific approach to, investigating or exploring these sorts of subjects. And I always like to sort of base it in the natural world. I suppose that's really my perspective on this. I don't like the term supernatural, for example. Mm-hmm. I believe that all of these things are part of the natural world. Science just hasn't got around to understanding them yet. So that's really the way I kind of look at it. And the same was the UFO phenomenon too. I'm very skeptical of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, for example. I sort of go more for the Earth lights, ball lightning angle when it comes to UFOs. That really sort of sums up my perspective or my approach to looking at these sorts of topics.
Mm-hmm. So how did you become interested in it?
I think it's partly due to my childhood because I grew up in a fairly remote area. I actually spent a large part of my childhood in Tasmania, sorry. We lived, I suppose, very, fairly close to nature. We didn't really sort of watch television much. I feel that if you really want to connect to these sorts of things, you've got to have that sort of connection to nature, I suppose. These sorts of experiences do tend to occur in sort of natural settings. Think of Whitley Strieber, for example, how a lot of his so-called abduction experiences occurred, in that remote cabin, for example. So, you hear stories of, a lot of these contact experiences or UFO experiences happening, in the desert, for example, that kind of thing. So I think that really helped. Sort of made me more aware of the paranormal, I suppose, because it's a very subtle, sort of elusive thing, and it only manifests under very special conditions. But also in my late teens, early 20s, I had quite a few sleep paralysis experiences as well. And I'm sure most people are familiar with what sleep paralysis is. Most people have experienced it. But in my case, it was these were very frequent episodes. And, so what happens is you're in a sort of, mind awake, body asleep state. It's a twilight state of consciousness. It's associated with hypnagogia, mm-hmm. or the hypnagogic state. And all sorts of strange experiences can occur. So basically your body is paralyzed because it's normally paralyzed during REM sleep to, prevent you from acting out your dreams. And people often report very similar experiences. There'll usually be a heavy weight on your chest. Sometimes there'll be, voices will be heard. There's usually a sense presence. And no doubt there's, some of these experiences can be explained, just sort of physiologically. But there's some very weird aspects to sleep paralysis, which sort of seem to suggest that there could be something paranormal happening. And I wrote a book about it called Dark Intrusions, and I sort of place sleep paralysis in a sort of, in the broader paranormal context to try and understand, what I'd been through. And I found that there's all these remarkable connections between, sleep paralysis and mediumship and ufology, etc. So that certainly opened my eyes to, all this weird stuff, if you like. They were very transformative experiences.
Yeah, no doubt. Can you dig into that a little bit? I know a couple people that have that problem, it manifests as like incubus or succubus encounters, which can be quite terrifying. But can you sort of dig into a little bit about how you separate out, like how you can, how it's not just such a physical explanation for that. It's not just strictly like you're paralyzed. There is a different dimension to that.
Yeah. Well, you've got to realize, first of all, that everyone's sleep paralysis experiences are different. Some people only experience a very sort of mild form of sleep paralysis. There is no sense presence. There are no so-called hallucinations. Other people have much more consistent, experiences where there's a lot more going on. And this can include, as I said, like a sense presence. You do feel as though there's an entity in the room with you. And sometimes you can be attacked and that sort of things. I mean, you'll feel sensations on your body. It's sometimes like a pair of hands around your neck, for example, or something like that. There's also another thing where sometimes it feels as though the entity or so-called entity is actually shaking the bed, rocking it back and forth. And we find that kind of thing in sort of haunted house type cases and that sort of thing. So a lot of places that are considered haunted, people have these types of experiences whenever they enter those locations, or at least they're more likely to occur. Don't happen to everyone, of course. You've got to be, I suppose, a little bit open to that sort of experience. But yeah, also the voices are very peculiar as well. I mean, you'll hear like a voice externally, and usually the comments are quite sort of cryptic, quite disturbing. So there's that really sort of terrifying aspect where people do feel as though they're battling with demons or evil spirits and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the weird thing is that, it's sleep paralysis is considered, these experiences are considered hallucinations, and, hallucinations that arise from REM sleep. And so according to that explanation, pretty much anything should happen during sleep paralysis. And yet a lot of people describe the same sorts of things, such as the rocking bed sensation and that kind of thing. Cryptic comments heard in someone's ear or sometimes directly inside your head, if you like. And also, the sensations of being touched. A lot of people talk about being strangled and that kind of thing. So some very, very, the thing is you really need to experience it directly in order to be able to fully understand or appreciate, the complexity of the experience, I suppose. And a lot of people who've just had very mild sleep paralysis experiences without any so-called hallucinations will say, oh, there's nothing going on, But those people who've experienced it repeatedly and have had the more sort of violent sleep paralysis episodes would say that there's definitely something that can't be explained, as being purely physiological. There's some other component at work.
Did you come across any physical evidence from people getting, either beat up or attacked at night? Was there any evidence of that?
Look,
like bruising. And I mean, I know it's hard to prove, but was there any of that?
Well, the thing is that some of these same types of experiences can occur, as I said, in so-called haunted houses, and also they can accompany, poltergeist type incidents as well. So people who, like particularly the so-called poltergeist focus, because poltergeists, of course, occur around a living person. And as we know, poltergeist is German for noisy or boisterous spirit. So these people often do report having these quite violent sleep paralysis episodes, and also witnessing some very strange activity that obviously does have an external component. Objects being thrown around the house and that kind of thing. So they certainly tie together, or they're quite closely associated. So I'd say that's really where the physical evidence is. So maybe in some cases sleep paralysis episodes are only internal. Maybe in other cases whatever is happening is externalized in some fashion, whereby there is that physical component, objects being thrown around, loud noises, etc. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, it's fascinating. So then you ended up doing your research on the electromagnetic phenomena, and was there any connection there between, like that type of experience, like let's just call it poltergeist, even though it might be sleep paralysis as well, but let's call it that, the sixth sense that we sort of have in our being, and the electromagnetic thing? Like, is there some commonality there between those?
Right. Well, first of all, it's a very complex area, very multifaceted, and there was only so much I could cover in my book, Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions. But the reason I wrote that book was to because there is always an electromagnetic component to the paranormal. We see this in the case of poltergeist disturbances, where there are electromagnetic anomalies and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And also, this is, I'm probably going off on a bit of a tangent here, but the poltergeist agents or the focus, often those people report having a large build-up of static on their bodies, for example. They seem to generate an unusually large amount of static electricity. Some of these people do report also having suffered like an electric shock, or in some rare cases they claim to have been struck by lightning and that sort of thing. We find that in the case of a lot of psychics as well. Uri Geller, for example, when he was a child, he claims that he was basically fooling around with his mum's sewing machine, and he saw like a bright blue spark inside, and he put his finger in and he was thrown violently backwards. And after that, he developed, his psychic abilities, which include, being able to supposedly, bend cutlery by paranormal means and that sort of thing. So it is a very broad area, but yeah, certainly, I suppose if you want to narrow it down, there's, as I said, a lot of these people have experienced electric shock, mediums, poltergeist agents, because they are very closely related, of course. So that seems to almost kind of induce the phenomena, I suppose. Yeah, I'm probably I'm trying to cover too much here in the one question.
Yeah,
we might need to sort of narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, well, let's get into the sixth sense part then. There is. Yep. I heard you talk about the magnetite, which I don't know if people realize that there is that in our brains. Yep. I guess, right? Is that somewhat responsible for some of this? Yeah. Look, that's
certainly because first of all, the ability is called magnetoception, and it's the ability to detect a magnetic field, or the Earth's magnetic field in this case, and use it for navigational purposes. And a lot of animals have this ability. Homing pigeons, for example, mole rats, and turtles, etc. It's even been found in bacteria, and we know that this. Obviously, there is some kind of mechanism in the body that allows this to happen. This ability to sense a magnetic field. And they've done a lot of research on this. Scientists, they've discovered that that these animals that have this ability, they have particles of magnetite in their bodies. Some research has been done into this regarding human magnetoception. There have been experiments where there was a British biologist, Robin Baker, who did all these experiments in the 70s. He placed school children on buses, blindfolded them, and he'd take them on these long, winding trips through the countryside. They couldn't see any light or any other external cues, etc. And then he'd go out to a remote location. He'd tell them to step off the bus, and then he'd get them to point in the direction of home with the blindfold still on. And he discovered remarkably that a lot of these children were able to point in the direction of home, but yet when he removed the blindfold, they became completely disoriented, and they confused, and they didn't know which direction home was. So he came up with the theory that we do have this ability. It's a subconscious ability, and that we probably it would have been of benefit to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. So they would have made use of this ability to, to find their way around, and basically it would have been for survival purposes. But it makes sense that since the emergence of civilization and towns and cities, etc., and we remaining in one place. Yeah, that's true. Yes. Yep. Interference from artificial sources of electromagnetism
because you're basically
could interfere with this ability. Yeah.
You're basically talking about the same thing that's letting, whales find their way around the planet and migrate, and, birds are flying north and south. So we got little fucking magnets in our skin or in our brain. Is that what's happening there? Basically, we got a magnetic particle inside our body.
Well, look, as I said, the evidence, the evidence isn't conclusive, and I mean there have been studies where they have actually sort of taken apart human brain tissue, that they've tried to find these particles of magnetite, and they have actually, there is evidence that these particles do exist in human brain tissue. But once again, you've got to realize that that the fact that these particles might exist is not something that I suppose the authorities, if you like, would want to acknowledge, simply because it suggests that not only are we being affected by the Earth's magnetic field, but also artificial sources of electromagnetism. So it sort of indicates, or I suppose opens up the possibility that that we may be adversely affected by artificial electromagnetic fields. So a lot of this research, I wouldn't say it's necessarily been suppressed, but it hasn't been given a lot of attention. And the people who've done this kind of research, they've received a lot of criticism, etc. In the case of Robin Baker, for example, he did many experiments, and I think his evidence is quite strong that humans can sense the Earth's magnetic field. But he stopped doing that research. He just found that he wasn't getting anywhere. People weren't listening. So
there's no money in telling people to get rid of their cell phones or their televisions. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But yeah, it is.
So if we're talking about I mean, I gotta say, when I see things like that we got this, the idea of having a magnetic particle inside us for purpose of migration and things like that makes a lot of sense to me. When I start thinking about magnets and as being possible for the sixth sense or things like that, it makes me think simulation again. I mean, it's hard not to think simulation when the electromagnetism starts affecting things like that we're not in some sort of computer that, I don't know. Is that off base, do you think, or?
Look, I don't, the simulation hypothesis, I haven't really looked into that much, to be honest. But I suppose the way I see it is, it just makes sense that we would have these particles of magnetite in the body, simply because, like other animals do, and it's how that we remain, I suppose, tuned to the Earth's electromagnetic field. Schumann resonance signals and that kind of thing. I mean, we evolved in the presence of the Earth's magnetic field. So of course we're going to be tuned to that field, and I mean they have done experiments too in circadian rhythms. It's a known fact that of course if you're not exposed to any light, if you're kept say in an underground bunker, your circadian rhythms are going to slip out of phase basically with the light dark cycle.
Does that happen at like a scheduled rate? Like if you have an old watch that loses like 3 minutes a day? Does your circadian rhythm lose any a set amount of data? Like, how long does it take before you're completely fucking backwards from the rest of the planet? You're up, it's dark, you're going to sleep just as the sun's coming up, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Does that take like a week, do you think? Or is it random, or does it take... I wonder how that works. I'm curious now. We should throw Graham in something.
I'm not sure specifically how long it takes. I know that these experiments have been done over quite lengthy periods, so many, many months, for example. I'd say it is a gradual process. I did read too that so instead of being like a 24-hour cycle, it lengthens. It becomes like around 25 hours, that kind of thing. These biological cycles in the body. But the point I wanted to come to there was the fact that the Earth's magnetic field plays a role in this. I mean, it's known that if a person is completely shielded from the Earth's magnetic field, that this is more likely to occur, that their circadian rhythms are going to slip out of phase. And they have found too that if they introduce a magnetic field or electric field of around 10 hertz, that actually can restore a person's circadian rhythm. So, so certainly that's one aspect of. I mean, we're tuned to the light-dark cycle. We're tuned to the Earth's magnetic field. All of these things are, enabling us to our bodies to function, in a particular way. And if we're not exposed to these things, we become completely out of tune with the Earth, and it can affect our health, etc.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a bit about the circadian rhythms being off, affecting your health, like the sleep. Yeah. The sleep problem really affects our health, but then there's also the artificial electromagnetic fields, like the power lines, and I don't know if 5G is included in there somewhere, but do you see evidence of a negative impact on our health and well-being from those?
Sorry, what was that thing that you mentioned just there? I do apologize.
The 5G.
Oh, okay.
And the power lines and the circadian rhythms. Like it seems like that would all be connected at some point.
Yeah, look, I mean, they've done a lot of studies in this. So it seems to be, it certainly ties into the pineal gland, which of course produces melatonin. So they have found that when a person is, exposed to certain kinds of artificial electromagnetic fields, that it can actually interfere with the production of melatonin. Basically, it seems to suppress the production of melatonin. And then what happens, of course, is that person's sleep-wake cycle, is interfered with. And then, of course, that can affect the immune system, and they'll be more likely to get ill, of course. So they have done quite a few studies into this, and it's even been discovered too that the Earth's magnetic field, or during times when the Earth's magnetic field is disturbed, solar storms, etc. Mm-hmm. That can actually contribute to this. It can sort of suppresses the production of melatonin, and there's actually a link too between geomagnetic disturbances and suicide rates. As too, suicide rates actually peak around those times as well. So
is that because people can't sleep?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That'll do it.
So I wonder what, like, I was with a friend of mine this morning for coffee, and he was talking about how one of the guys that he used to train was I think he was a electrical engineer or something, but he came down with ALS, and then within 9 months he was really, really bad. I mean, have you seen any specific health issues around some of this? Like something like ALS that would affect your nervous system, and why are some people sensitive to this and others aren't?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I wouldn't be able to answer that question, why some people are more sensitive than others. But I think that makes sense that some people would be more sensitive than others. I mean, there is a condition called electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which is a very controversial condition. And these are people who say that they that they're basically allergic to artificial sources of electromagnetism, that they can develop rashes on their body, and they feel very, very sick. They lose the ability to concentrate. They can get headaches, etc. And there has been some research into this to try and work out whether or not it's it's really all in their minds, or if there is actually a genuine allergic response occurring in the body. And there is some evidence that it is a genuine allergic response, similar to other types of allergic reactions. It seems as though some people are just more sensitive than others. I suppose you got to allow for mental health issues and that sort of thing. But we need to realize too that this is all, that we're very much the guinea pigs in all this. I mean, this the widespread use of electricity, the use of electricity on a large scale, it's only really been going on for about 80 years. Yeah. So it's a very recent thing in the history of humanity.
Yeah, good point.
Throw in a little Wi-Fi, sprinkle a little Wi-Fi on.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean,
some cell signals. We'll throw in some radio signals, some satellite signals. We'll throw sprinkle some brake dust on there.
Exactly. Yeah. You mentioned 5G before too, which is another thing that's being rolled out. And these are much smaller waves than microwaves too. Like millimeter-sized waves. So. And they're going to be,
people know, microwaves are what you use to microwave things in your microwave.
Well, Look, see, the thing is, with a microwave oven, it's like high intensity microwave radiation, which that has like a thermal effect on the body. It actually heats, the tissue, and hence you can use microwaves to heat up food. But so cell phone towers and that sort of thing, that they're using microwaves, but they're using like low intensity microwaves. So they've found that, okay, there are no thermal effects occurring. It's not heating, bodily tissue or anything like that. So that the controversy is really centered around whether there are non-thermal effects associated with this form of radiation. Non-ionizing radiation is what it's classified as. But
so does that mean that cell phones could be responsible for global warming?
Global warming. I don't know about that one. I don't have any information on that topic. I'd say that's probably unlikely. But yeah, bear in mind, I'm not a scientist or anything like that. I'm just a humble researcher. My job was just to try and sort of connect the dots.
Collate the research and connect the dots. That's what we need, though. That's great. So is high voltage syndrome different than the hypersensitivity one?
Right. I see. So high voltage syndrome, that's what we refer to as electric people. So that's the name for that condition.
Oh, okay. So it is different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there are a lot of different terms out there. But yeah, high voltage syndrome. So basically, these are people who claim that they exert an odd effect on electrical equipment. So, for example, they claim that, if they wear a wristwatch, that it malfunctions within a very short period of time, that, they can't go near computers because they'll crash and that sort of thing.
Email problems.
And also, yeah, exactly. So they just have a strange effect on electrical equipment. And also they claim, too, that their bodies build up an unusually large amount of static electricity as well. And of course, this does tie into like poltergeist agents as well, because quite a few poltergeist agents are also, electric people. But I suppose one of the most sort of modern manifestations of this would be the street lamp interference phenomenon. And I get a lot of emails from people still, because I wrote an article on this and I posted it online. And still to this day, this was many years ago that I wrote the article, I'm still getting emails from people saying that, whenever I walk near street lamps, they blink on or they blink off. I seem to be affecting them just with my presence, which is very mysterious.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so you're seeing a lot of that then, a lot of people coming forward and talking about
exactly.
That.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems to affect a lot of people, and the thing is too. Well, I sort of came to the conclusion that maybe street lamps are particularly sensitive. They could in fact be influencing other gadgets as well, or other forms of equipment and that sort of thing. But perhaps street lamps are particularly sensitive to some kind of influence. But yeah, it's very mysterious. I think there might be psychokinesis could be involved. Sort of mind over matter kind of thing,
like a subconscious psychokinesis. I mean, it's hard to believe that some people, it's hard to believe that some people, some guys can get hit by lightning like 7 times, and some people this happens to, and most people it doesn't. Like, what's the difference in the people? Is it because their makeup is different, or are they?
Yeah. Well, I looked into some of the causes of I suppose high voltage syndrome, how these people become electric people. And certainly in a lot of cases it was due to electric shock. A lot of them do report having been, that they had an accident at home where they might have tried to plug in a faulty refrigerator or something like that, and they got an electric shock. And since then they've had this weird influence on electrical gadgets. And also, an emotional crisis seems to be able to bring it about as well. So sometimes people become electric people after, the death of a loved one, someone they were close to, and also lightning as well. I did actually exchange quite a few emails with people who claim that, that they have been struck by lightning, and that's what brought it about. So, and there's also this fascinating article that I mentioned in my book, Strange Electromagnetic Dimensions. This was a case in 1920 in a prison, Clinton prison in Danmora, New York, where there were, I think it was 34 prisoners developed what were described as peculiar static electric powers after eating contaminated salmon. So they developed botulism, and they basically, while they were sick with this, with botulism, they, as I said, they had these peculiar static electric powers, and all sorts of weird things were reported. Like, one man was he scrunched up a piece of paper and he was about to throw it into the bin, but it actually stuck to his hand, and that kind of thing. And apparently, they were able to transfer this. They're able to make objects sort of statically charged and like a piece of paper, and then sort of place it on a wall, and it would remain, sticking to the wall and that kind of thing. But the weird thing is that it doesn't seem to be explainable just by static electricity alone, because apparently these prisoners were actually remaining statically charged even when their bodies were earthed. For example, when they were in the bath and that kind of thing. And certainly under those conditions, there shouldn't be any static electricity clinging to the body. So it's very strange. As I said, it seems to tie into psychokinesis. There's definitely a sort of a paranormal aspect to this. We do know that the human body, it can become statically charged. And certainly the human body itself is sort of electrochemical machine, if you like. We have, of course, there's nerve cells, muscle cells, and there is a very weak electromagnetic field around the body, but it's a very weak field.
Is that the same as your chi?
Sorry, what was that?
Is that the same as your chi, your electromagnetic field?
Right. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. With things like chi and so on, those sorts of terms, it's really referring to these kind of subtle energies, and this is very much a universal belief. The Chinese they'll call it chi energy, sort of life force energy. Mesmer, of course, talked about animal magnetism. And then, of course, there's orgone energy, which is what Wilhelm Reich termed it.
Who's Wilhelm Reich again? Is he a Nazi? No.
Was he a Nazi? I don't think so. No, I certainly wouldn't call him a Nazi. But yeah, look, the reason I mentioned Reich is as I said, in relation to orgone, and he claimed to have found scientific evidence for this sort of life force energy, and he thought that it was distinct from electromagnetism. It was basically a different type of energy, and that the two are actually antagonistic. So that, for example, that orgone could become contaminated, if you will, upon being exposed to sources of electromagnetism. But yeah, he called it basically life force energy, that kind of thing, vital energy. So it's very much a universal belief. And I do look at the theory in my book that perhaps this is the energy behind psi phenomena, psychokinesis, telepathy, etc. Maybe that is the type of energy that's being exchanged, if you like. So I think that's a very interesting idea as well.
Looks like Wilhelm Reich's book was banned by the Nazis, so probably not a Nazi.
Yeah.
It does say
We've
here
talked
that-
about him before. I can't believe you're asking these questions. I mean, we talked. He's the one that was involved in the weather modification and like Oregon to disperse clouds and stuff like that.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Says here he's also got some ties to the free love movement because he claimed that better orgasms could cure society's ills.
He's probably right. There you go. Lots of chi in those.
Is there?
Yeah.
Wow. Gotta watch you don't spontaneously combust. You're getting busy with yourself. Is that an issue? What do you think? Spontaneous human combustion, is that? What do you think's going on there? Is that overcheating?
I always thought it was somebody just like with their cig. I mean, wasn't the skeptical answer way back when those magazines first came out talking about it in the 80s, I think it was, or the 70s, that somebody just like was full of alcohol and their cigarette had burned down and caught them on fire. I hope those have been debunked since then.
Yeah, look, that's it's a topic I look at quite closely in my upcoming book, Borderland Phenomena. There is a section there on spontaneous human combustion. It's a mystery I've always been fascinated with. It doesn't seem to get a lot of attention these days. A lot of people think that it has been debunked, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's like still left over from decades ago. Just like the Bermuda Triangle, same thing.
Yep. Yeah, look, it is kind of sort of placed in that same sort of category. Yeah. But there's some really intriguing, well-documented cases, and it still occurs to this day, of course. It doesn't get as much publicity, I suppose. But basically, it's where a body is almost completely incinerated when there seems to be no external source of ignition. And usually it seems to happen over a fairly short period of time, like within an 8 to 10 hour period. The very weird thing is that, it's very difficult to reduce a body to ashes because we're talking about the almost complete incineration of a human body. There might sort of be like a limb remaining, that kind of thing, sometimes a foot or something like that. Usually the torso is completely burnt away. But the bones in some cases are completely, as I say, completely reduced to ash, which is very peculiar because even if you try to, burn a body in a crematorium, it takes a very high temperature, a lot of energy to reduce a body to ash. And even then the bones are actually, they need to be crushed in order to be reduced to ash. They've actually got to put them in a device that's called a cremulator, which sort of basically these large ball bearings spin around and crush the bones and that sort of thing. So the question is, how does this happen? How, what is the source of energy involved, I suppose? And I mean, if you sort of look on the internet, you look at some of the more sort of skeptical articles and that sort of thing, they'll all say that it's to do with the wick effect, which is the theory that the human body is more or less similar to a sort of a candle in the sense, or an inside-out candle, where the clothing is the wick and the fat is the fuel. and that what's happening is there is some form of external ignition, maybe a dropped cigarette or something like that, a spark from a fire, a hot ember or whatever, and that person, usually they are elderly people who aren't very mobile. So the theory is that their clothing catches on fire, that starts to melt the fat, and then it sort of draws the fat out of the body, and it sort of continues to burn, very slowly, sort of smolders. And that over a very long period, then that basically is what reduces the body to ash. But they've tried to replicate this in, they've done all sorts of experiments to try and do this with like pig carcasses and that sort of thing. And none of those experiments have been very successful. I mean, they've had difficulty trying to light these bodies, these pig carcasses, for example. They've had to sometimes pour gasoline on them and that sort of thing. So it's really is a huge mystery, but there are many theories for what causes spontaneous human combustion.
What's
your favorite?
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I mean, there's I suppose. Well, in my book, I really focused on the sort of poltergeist angle, and this is something that a writer by the name of Vincent Gaddis. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He was a very famous Fortean author. I wrote a lot about the Bermuda Triangle. Apparently, he coined that term, Bermuda Triangle. Huh. But he wrote this fantastic book called Mysterious Fires and Lights. And I recommend to everyone who's interested in Fortean stuff to try and get a copy of this book. I think you can find it through I think Borderland Sciences Foundation. It's a really interesting book. But he came up with the theory that, and he tied it into poltergeistry. He said that, in the case of poltergeists, cases. So in the case of poltergeist, what's happening is the energy is being externalized. Because he did believe it was due to the subconscious. It was the person's subconscious causing these things to occur. And he said it's the energy is externalized and it's used to move objects around, etc. But in the case of spontaneous human combustion, the energy is actually internalized. And he described it as a form of sort of subconscious suicide. And he mentions the fact that a lot of these victims were actually very depressed individuals. So it's almost as though because of their mental state, that sort of triggered something in the body that where this energy was internalized, and then the person sort of basically burst into flames, which I know sounds a little bit comical, but I think that's a really fascinating way of looking at it.
Huh. Another term to burn up inside. You're burning up inside.
I wonder if you could just like raise your vibration too high and then you just, that's it.
Too low, I think.
Too low?
Yeah. You're angry and upset, and if you're raising it high, then you wouldn't catch on fire.
But microwave's high.
Well, I mean, the thing is interesting. You mentioned that because you would have heard of the theory that that these experiences are due to the awakening of Kundalini energy. Because these yogis, they talk about this that when they're undergoing that experience of awakening, this energy that's sort of supposed to lie at the base of the spine and sort of like in the form of they talk about like a sort of coiled serpent, and it rises up through the body and activates the chakras and this kind of thing. And they sometimes describe it as being sort of a burning sensation. They talk about how if you awaken your Kundalini energy too quickly, you can actually, they talk about it actually, the person can either sort of go mad or they can actually catch on fire. So that's another way of looking at it as well. The Kundalini energy theory.
It easy.
Yeah. So yeah, apparently if you activate it too quickly and in the wrong manner, it can have disastrous effects. Yeah.
But I don't think this guy's sitting at home drunk with his cigar activating his Kundalini.
No, that's the thing. I mean, these people who these victims of SHC, they're not necessarily people who would meditate or anything like that. They're usually sort of depressed loners, who aren't interested in anything spiritual, I suppose. So I don't think these are necessarily related to Kundalini energy or anything like that. But I think that's a very interesting angle. And then there's the whole, the Tibetan monks have a practice called tumo, where they try to they're apparently able to basically sort of sit in the snow and heat their bodies to the extent where they don't actually need any clothing or anything like that, and they're able to melt the snow around them. And this is something that Alexandra David Neal talks about in her book about Tibet. She traveled throughout Tibet and sort of documented some of this stuff. So, that's another way of looking at it too. That possibly it's got to do with the activation of some sort of energy in the body, but in the case of SHC, it sort of goes haywire or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, look at what the Iceman does. Wim Hof, right? He can run in the desert in his shorts, or up Mount Everest in his shorts. I mean, it's all through his breathing technique where he regulates his body temperature, and he can, become hot under the ice or freezing cold in the desert. So, like you said, it's like so he's doing it somehow. Organically, biologically, and maybe this is like, just like you said, it's that thing, but out of control, like something sort of.
Exactly. Yep.
So what about ball light? I'm interested in this. We talk about UFOs all the time. Ball lightning. I heard you talk about that maybe being responsible for some of the sort of orb style sightings, that kind of thing. You want to explain that a little bit? Because it's pretty interesting to me. It's hard to imagine ball lightning going in and out of places and keyholes and chimneys and stuff like that. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is have to be one of my favorite topics, ball lightning. And this is once again, this is something that science has only really accepted in recent decades. That there are many sightings of ball lightning. Going back through human history, but it was only really until like the 1970s that scientists said, okay, this thing does actually exist. And basically these are like small balls of light, usually about the size of a grapefruit. They can be a variety of different colors, so red, blue, yellow, orange. And ball lightning usually manifests during thunderstorm activity. It usually occurs after a strike of lightning to the ground, and usually what happens is these objects, they'll basically just stick around for a few seconds and then they explode. In some cases, quite violently. So ball lightning has a very short lifespan in most cases. But the weird thing is that there are cases where the object remains for a longer period of time, and it seems to exhibit some kind of intelligence. There's heaps of sightings of, for example, ball lightning. It can squeeze through the keyhole of a door. That's reported. Well, there aren't many reports like that, but I've come across quite a few. But usually what will happen is, there'll be like an open window or something like that. The object will enter the home via the window, and in some cases it will very carefully explore the room, and then it will exit via the window, the same window, that kind of thing. So definitely seems to exhibit some form of intelligence. Yeah.
Well, or is it just simply following the electrical current, or like around the room and out the door? I mean, is it just taking the path of least resistance or something like that?
Through the fucking keyhole is the path of least resistance?
Well, the only way out. I mean, obviously it doesn't go under the door, it goes through the keyhole. I mean, what you think it's... so do you think there's some intelligence, or is it just strictly an electromagnetic type thing?
Yeah, look, I mean, I suppose most scientists would probably say, it's just sort of following the electrical wires and that sort of thing. It just appears to be behaving in an intelligent manner. But I've come across reports where, for example, there was one case where the object enters the room and it was, it was like hovering over a rug, and it was actually tracing the patterns in the rug, which is very mysterious. It was basically, sort of following those patterns in the rug, which is, how do you explain something like that, for example? And also the other thing too is sometimes it will very carefully circle around a person and that kind of thing.
So how could you why isn't that an orb then? Like, how do you tell the difference between ball lightning and a legit orb?
Yep. Well, that's a good question, because the thing is that it all depends on really what kind of label we give these things. I mean, in the case of ball lightning, usually it's reported as ball lightning when it manifests during a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
And so there's that association, but it's kind of a loose association, because sometimes these objects are reported during fine weather as well. But it seems as though we're dealing with a whole variety of different phenomena.
Yeah.
And then you have things like earth lights, for example, which tend to sort of haunt specific locations, and they seem to be associated with the geology of the area. So, deposits of minerals and fault lines and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And there seems to be a different sort of mechanism involved. But these things are very much connected to the Earth. They are produced by the Earth. But in some cases, in some very rare cases, they do seem to have some form of intelligence, and you certainly see that in the case of Earth lights. I mean, you may have read some of Paul Devereaux's books on Earth lights.
We had him on a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I thought we had Paul Devereaux on.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, but the thing is too, in my books, I've looked at this in relation to the Foo Fighter phenomenon as well. So this is really how the modern era of UFOs came into being. It really goes back earlier than Kenneth Arnold's famous sighting. It goes back to World War II, when the radar was being developed, and the Allies were seeing these strange objects, these balls of light, small balls of light that would toy with their planes and that sort of thing. Sometimes circle around the aircraft, and they, totally confusing and baffling these pilots. And of course, the Allies thought, well, it's probably some form of secret weapon developed by the Nazis, etc. But then it turns out, of course, the Germans and the Japanese were also seeing these things as well. The extraterrestrial hypothesis would suggest, or would argue, I suppose, that these were sort of alien probes or something like that. But I really see it in terms of a sort of a natural phenomenon. And then, of course, interestingly enough, too, was Kenneth Arnold's sighting of those 9 shiny objects that he described in the state of Washington. He actually later came to believe that what he'd actually seen was some form of life. This relates to the sky creature theory, which says that UFOs are actually living creatures that inhabit the atmosphere and only manifest under very special conditions. So Kenneth Arnold actually subscribed to that theory. He didn't think that what he saw that day, and he did have other sightings as well, was actually extraterrestrial in origin. He thought it was some form of life that we weren't really able to, or that we knew very little about, and that scientists would one day sort of be able to study and understand, I suppose. That was his take on it.
The thing I don't understand about the Foo Fighters and that being a natural phenomenon is, then where did it go? Yep. Why did it just disappear? I mean, why in that war, which would it just all of a sudden then, did we change the way we're like, how that's
a very good question. But that seems to be the case with the UFO phenomenon, where there seems to be all these different phases to it, I suppose. There was the Foo Fighter phenomenon. There were reports of sort of cigar-shaped objects and that kind of thing. Yeah. And then I suppose there are the more sort of sophisticated sightings, and then we have like the abduction phenomenon, etc. But with the Foo Fighters, there's this great book called The Cosmic Pulse of Life. You may have read it. It's by a man named Trevor James Constable. And he developed a theory that what was actually happening was, because of the widespread use of radar, because we were sort of sending out all these, these microwaves into the atmosphere, bombarding the atmosphere with microwave energy, that was actually having a negative impact on these living creatures. And that was interfering with them to the point where they were sort of manifesting, I suppose. And he believes that was the case with the Foo Fighters. He believed that they were normally invisible, but under certain special conditions they could manifest. And he said it was to do with mankind's use of artificial sources of electromagnetism, sort of energizing the planet and allowing these things to appear, I suppose, to human vision.
That's like some Final Fantasy shit right there. Well, I was going to say, because they say that life on Earth might have started from lightning striking the primordial soup or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But if we're seeing Graham and I were just watching a video, there's some ball lightning in Siberia where the lightning strikes, and then you've got this ball there.
Super bright though, like that.
It just makes you wonder if it isn't some sort of, if life isn't created there for a second, and then it sort of fucking fithers out somehow. Almost like a glitch in the Matrix for a second, where it's not supposed to happen, but it just happened, and then because it's not in the primordial soup, it just evaporates. Is that or some like Star Trek Q stuff going on? Maybe he's like. Remember Q in Star Trek before QAnon ruined everything? It was just like that ultimate being that could just do whatever he wanted.
Right. I must admit I'm not familiar with that character.
No, me neither. What is he talking about?
You guys are just...
character, all right.
But look, I mean, we may be dealing with some sort of plasma-based life. And maybe this life form inhabits another dimension, like a parallel dimension or something like that. But it is able to manifest in our dimension. And in order to do that, it has to take on some kind of physical form, and it chooses plasma to manifest in physical form. I mean, that's a good point. That's a pretty wild theory, but I think it's very interesting. Yeah,
or just using it as a vehicle, or, it could be manifesting, or maybe just, riding along.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of brings me to like...
It's a universe trying to observe itself.
Yeah.
Without psychedelics.
Yeah, but yet you're not so much of a proponent of the ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
No, not really. I to begin with, when I first started looking into the UFO phenomenon, probably would have been in my teens at that point. I was reading a lot of books on it, and I was really sucked into this all this abduction stuff, and I did truly believe that these were physical beings that were coming down and taking people and experimenting on them and that kind of thing. But the closer I looked at it, I saw less and less evidence for that. And as I said too, you got to look at things like sleep paralysis and that sort of thing as well. You've got to look at sort of out-of-body experiences, etc. But I really don't see any sort of hard physical evidence for there being aliens visiting Earth. I mean, there obviously is a physical component to it, and that's why you can have things like like saucer nests and that sort of thing, or burnt patches in the ground where these objects have supposedly landed. But this could be explained by, plasma physics. So these, because these objects might in some cases be quite hot, could be a hot form of plasma. And also they could be emitting very powerful electromagnetic fields as well. So perhaps when people do come in close contact with these objects, they can stimulate the brain in such a way that person has a kind of visionary experience, I suppose.
Or maybe vice versa, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of groups. I mean, I participate in one myself, but there's a lot of groups now around the world that are, meditate. Well, no, but this is an important point of it.
You guys should try to lick the batteries next time.
We're meditating and focusing on, on UFOs, and they show up. I mean, the lights flashing, low flyers coming by. And I mean, I'm not saying they're ET, but they could be... who knows what it could be, but there's some connection there when we go out and look for them. And they didn't seem to be doing that in the 90s, but now they're, I'm hearing from groups all over the place that people are seeing stuff, and it's not planes, and it's not, it might be orbs, might be ball lightning, it might be other types of light phenomena, but it seems intelligent because it comes when we ask it to, and it somewhat interacts with us. So how is there still room for, without ET, there's still room for a couple things, but it's pretty hard to come up with a proper answer for that.
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of Jacques Vallée's books on his approach to ufology. Mm-hmm. Books like Passport to Magonia, where he looks at it in terms of or explores it in relation to like the fairy tradition and that sort of thing. Another way of looking at it too is in relation to the jinn tradition as well, mm-hmm. Which is this Arabic
almost a trickstery thing in a way. Yeah,
exactly. So that really, that those two sort of actually tie together. The fairy tradition, the jinn tradition, they seem to be saying pretty much the same thing. But the idea is that there are these, invisible beings that inhabit a parallel world, I suppose, that they can perceive us, but we can't perceive them, and that occasionally they can enter this dimension or this plane of existence, our dimension, and manifest physically for short periods of time, and basically, they're supposed to be shapeshifters. They can take on any form that they choose. So I think there's something going on there. I do believe that there's some other form of intelligence interacting with humanity, but I sort of see that more in terms of as I said, like the Jacques Vallée's ideas of this being the same thing as what I suppose our ancestors would have called fairies. So very similar thing to that. But as far as like extraterrestrials goes, I mean that's saying that they come from another planet, that they actually they come here from another part of the universe, and they have
physical
to come here
craft or whatever. Like it's more. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't discount that idea as well. I mean, that maybe some of these sightings that have happened were actually extraterrestrial in origin. So who knows?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I want to touch back on something that we kind of skipped over a little bit, probably because it's one of the most important parts of your research, I think, and I don't think we hit it enough. And before we run out of time here, it's the negative health effects, or if there's enough research to show negative health effects from man-made artificial electromagnetic fields. So not the natural stuff that we've evolved to be a part of, but all this artificial stuff. Can you get into that a little bit more before we run out of time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So all I can really say is that I think people should certainly look at the research that's been done in this. There are some very credible studies that have been done into this, looking at the adverse health effects of artificial electromagnetic fields. As I said, some of these studies indicate that it's possibly got to do with the suppression of the production of melatonin in the body, and that in turn, as I said, disrupts the sleep-wake cycle, lowers the person's immunity. There is other studies which indicate too that there could be some kind of stress response occurring as well, that it actually induces a state of stress in the body. And I, for a period, I lived in a house fitted with a smart meter. This was in 2012.
Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was working on a book at that stage, and so this device was installed in the home. Smart meters, of course, are just different to analog electricity meters that need to be read by a person. Smart meters actually transmit the data, directly to the electricity provider. So, and they use very short, sharp bursts of radio frequency radiation. And some of these bursts that have been measured are very strong. But basically what happened was I was working on a book at that stage. I started to notice that I felt very agitated, and that my health just wasn't so good. My immune system didn't seem to be coping very well. And then I realized, oh, okay, well, there has been a smart meter installed on the home. I wonder if that's got something to do with it.
Huh.
And I came across all these articles because they were rolling out smart meters throughout Melbourne at that stage. So they were just coming along, and even without people's permission, etc., they were just taking out the analog electricity meter and installing a smart meter. And there were so many reports, or so many people describing very similar symptoms, this feeling of agitation, being very stressed, and not knowing why. And in some cases, there were, people having to leave their homes and that sort of thing. They were saying that ever since this device was installed, that they just felt that they could not remain in their home. They had to just get out. It was sort of like they're in a state of panic, I suppose. So I think these are the things that people need to look out for. They need to obviously take into consideration their own mental health and that sort of thing, and not necessarily jump to conclusions. But I'd say in a lot of cases, what's really happening here is that it's really affecting people's mental health. It's causing or basically contributing to things like anxiety, depression, etc. Because there's kind of an epidemic of all these sort of mental health problems. And there is research into this. I mean, it is going back even in the 1970s. The Soviet researchers, Eastern European researchers, they came up with the term radio wave sickness to explain this condition where people were having all these health effects as a result of exposure to artificial sources of electromagnetism. They specifically listed, feelings of stress and irritability, headaches, etc. So all these things are definitely, people need to be very cautious, I think. And unfortunately, it's at a point where we can't do anything about it. We're just totally immersed in this stuff. But nonetheless, there are maybe small things you can do. You can certainly switch off devices in your house when you're not using them. I mean, I'd turn off the Wi-Fi when I'm not using it. I certainly don't sleep with it on. So we need to try and sort of minimize our exposure a little bit, because we don't know what sort of effect these things are having on the human body.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. Because like if I shut my Wi-Fi off, there's probably like 20 other ones flying by that I can grab with my phone. So like, is that I feel like it's just not even worth it. I mean, my Wi-Fi is probably not even the closest one to my head. It's probably the neighbor's Wi-Fi that's right, like literally 10 feet past my window or something like that.
Ooh, if I shut off my Wi-Fi, there wouldn't be another Wi-Fi for a long time.
Wow, that's pretty good. So, I mean, the other thing is the smart meter can be quite the rabbit hole. Like, did you have to either tamper yourself from going down that rabbit hole, or I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff now. People are talking about spontaneous fires from the smart meters, and also the ability to measure exactly what you're doing inside the house, depending on the voltage and the stuff, and they can see your routine, and people have access to that information that they know exactly what I'm doing around my house just because of that smart meter. Like, did you get into any of that, or did you pretty much stick to the local problem that you were having with it?
Yeah, look, I mean, we, my wife at the time and I, we didn't stay in that house very long. So, it was only like another 6 months or so when we ended up moving to another city. And certainly we didn't have any problems after that. We moved into a house that wasn't fitted with a smart meter, thankfully. But I think that the main thing is it's not necessarily the amount of electromagnetism or artificial electromagnetism in the environment. You've got to look at sort of, I suppose, specific frequencies and that kind of thing. People seem to be sensitive to certain types of frequencies. Very often it's sort of within the radio frequency range. So it'll be interesting to see what, probably a little bit scary too, to see what happens in the case of 5G, for example. But I think too that people, should try and refrain from getting carried away with this stuff too, because I suppose basically we do have to live with it. We do have to tolerate it to some extent. There's just nothing else we can do. I mean, it might mean in some cases that a person might need to take better care of their mental health or something like that, or maybe even talk to a psychologist or what have you. But yeah, as I said, the experiment is happening right now, so we are very much the guinea pigs in all this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a very comforting thought. But yeah, what can you do? I mean, it's there's money in it, in this technology. It can't be stopped at this point. No, we're gonna evolve
to deal with it physically, probably. Over the decades, over the generations, it'll just become a part of it, or we'll become resilient, or the weak ones will die off, or however that's going to happen. I mean,
exactly. Maybe that's the case. Yep. Or maybe it's going to pave the way for artificial intelligence taking over.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
'cause they'll be able to maybe tolerate this stuff, and we won't.
And that's the only reason we're here.
Yeah. Oh, Darren, going back to the simulation.
Usher that in.
again.
That's it. We're just here to feed the simulation. It's going to eat us. Right on. Well, thanks for getting up early on your. I don't know if is it a holiday weekend over there in Tasmania?
Well, fortunately, I'm not working today. But yeah, no, I've had a few days off recently. So yeah, in order to do these sorts of things, do interviews and that sort of thing, I only work on a casual basis. But yeah, no, it's getting up to midday over here in Tassie. But it's been fantastic talking to you guys.
Tassie, baby. So
yeah, that's great.
How many people are in Tassie?
How many people?
Do you know Gordon White?
Well, I know how many people are in where I live in Burnie, which is sort of around 20,000. It's it's a pretty small place, pretty isolated. But Tassie itself, I'm not too sure. But it hasn't got a very big population, that's for sure. We are very much, I mean, obviously cut off from the mainland, and Tassie's a sort of a world in itself, I suppose. People would say that things are a little bit backwards here, I suppose. Yeah.
I bet it's wonderful.
So when's your book coming out then? Your new one, the one on borderland phenomena.
Yeah, yep. So that's being published by August Night Books, which is Robbie Graham's publishing company. It's affiliated with White Crow Books.
Nice.
So it's been a good opportunity to work with Robbie. He's a fine publisher and so on. And he's
we had him on
written
too.
some good books himself. But yeah, no, it's coming out in January. So January next year. Is when it should be. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll keep an eye open for it, and we'll link to it, and we'll link to all your other stuff as well, all the other books, and
we'll have you on again. We're going to chat again here in the new year, early in the new year, and we'll talk about the moon.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Look forward to it.
Yeah, that's one of our favorite topics. Thanks, buddy.
Right on. Enjoy the day over in Tassie.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Take
Bye
care.
For now.
Bye.
There you have it, Louis Proud.
Louis.
King Louis.
Geez, you tried to railroad him a couple times there, eh? Calling Reich a Nazi and all kinds of stuff. What was it? What's gotten into you on this? No more Sunday afternoon interviews.
I thought, I don't know. I heard Wilhelm Reich. I thought Nazi.
Jesus.
For some reason, I got caught up in. I thought I was thinking Project Paperclip.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But I mean, just to
He did
throw it
not
out
see
there
that
like
coming.
He did not, no.
He got nervous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially nowadays. Geez.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
He already doesn't do a lot of podcasts.
Yeah. Now he's never going to come back.
Yeah, he's coming back.
Oh, they're calling people Nazis on there. They're throwing F-bombs around.
Oh, there's a couple F-bombs. He rolled with them pretty good, though.
Yeah, he was a good sport.
Big thanks to King Louis over in Tassie for coming on the show.
You ever heard of Map of Tassie? Do you know what that is?
No.
Map of Tassie?
It's a map of Tasmania?
Yeah. Do you know what it is? It's a symbol for something.
No. I don't know. The Tasmanian devil?
Vagina.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's in that shape.
Oh.
They say, nice map of Tassie.
Who says that? Australians?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Does it have like a mountain? No, let's not get into it. Big thanks to Louis for coming on the show. Of course, we're going to do it. He did that great book on the moon as well. So we're going to do another show about that down the road. Of course, half our listeners who think the moon doesn't exist aren't going to tune into that one. But what can you do? We can't make everyone happy over here in Grimerica. We try, though. We do try. Check out Grimerica.ca/support, guys, so you can check out all the different options you can do to support the show. Actually, nowadays, you just enter your own. You can pick a monthly, yearly, one time, support the show.
Yeah, we do need your help with bills.
We need your help. Otherwise, we can't do it. It costs a fortune over here. And, we don't even have a roof over our heads at this point. So we need some support. It really does help out. And, and then you get to do things like get tickets to CAC before everyone else. So you get to go do the Randall Carlson hangout while other people are still waiting because they don't support the Grimerica show.
That's all you can handle with Randall in Colorado.
Or Randall Occurrence.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Ground will be there too. So will I. Get your tickets, motherfuckers. Grimerica.ca/support. Everything else is in the newsletter. It's all in the newsletter. Check out the newsletter right now. Do everything in the newsletter. And then enjoy the rest of your weekend. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week.
Season's greetings from the Grimerica Show podcast. Gather round the fireplace, Help yourself to some hot cocoa with a little marshmallows in it. Maybe have a candy cane or two, and maybe some cookies. It's so warm and jolly. Cry Merry Christmas. Podcasting from the igloo. Darren plays jingle bells on the didgeridoo. And over there, that's Graham crying tears of joy as he listens in on the little drummer boy. Pa-rum-pa-pum-pum. I see you've acquainted yourself with T-Ron. Yeah, it's true, he puffs Christmas trees up medicinal. Wait a second, is that? Yeah, I think that's Sasquatch beneath the mistletoe.
Get over here, Graham. Thank you for saving me and give me a kiss.
And it looks like Napoleon Doom is decorating the room with tinsels, ribbon, popcorn on strings, and poinsettias. They are in bloom. And you might ask, who's that in the green and red Lucha Libre mask? Why, of course, that's RPJ. Feliz Navidad. It's so warm and jolly. Cry Merry Christmas. Podcasting from the igloo. Darren plays jingle bells on the didgeridoo. And over there, that's Graham crying tears of joy as he listens in on the little drummer boy. You'll get a warm and fuzzy feeling if you donate to the Grimerica show. So get in the spirit, reach down in your pocket and make it rain. Let us know, make it snow, let us know, let us know, make it snow. Donate to the show. Donate to the show. Donate to the show. It's so warm and jolly. Cry Merry Christmas. Podcasting from the igloo. Darren plays jingle bells on the didgeridoo. And over there, that's Graham crying tears of joy as he listens in on the little drummer boy. Pa-rum-pa-pum.